Welcome to Chicago Jewish Cafe. Today we have as our guest Daniel Schwartz. He is the chief executive officer of an organization that he founded last year called Chicago Jewish Alliance. And I came across him this past Monday in Skokie police station where there was a meeting of largely Skokians. I do not know. There was maybe 100, 150 people, and about a dozen people. The meeting was devoted to discussion about the sort of, I do not know what to call, but children's pogrom on a playground. That's how I called in my previous YouTube message, and where half a dozen Jewish kids were attacked by more than a dozen of anti-Semitic kids or kids from anti-Semitic homes, ages 13 to 15, who were attacking them because they recognized them as Jews and because they called them baby killers, with reference to war in Gaza. Daniel was the first speaker of those 12 speakers in this police station. I do not know why they switched from village hall to police station, but that's what it was. And Daniel was the first speaker, and I liked what he had to say. So I invited him now to talk about what took place at that time and what is taking place in general in Skokie and what we Jews need or must do in order to have some effect. Daniel, welcome to Chicago Jewish Cafe. Could you please tell us, repeat what you told, if you remember, during that meeting Monday about what is going on and what you wanted to say?
Yeah, well, Alexander, thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it. Um, yeah, I think just to back up for 1 second, so the Chicago Jewish Alliance unearthed this story. The parents of the children that were involved in this pogrom on the park actually reached out to us. And a couple of the parents were saying that they talked to the police, they talked to some of the municipality, and there were some people that were helping, like Allison Slovin, you might know. She's with the Simon Wiesenthal Center. She was there and she spoke.
She is one of the trustees in Skokie,
Correct.
right?
Yeah, but she's also an advocate for the Jews and the Jewish community here in Chicago. But the reality of the situation is it seemed like when it was a Jewish victim involved, that there was a difference in the mechanisms and how Skokie was responding. As you mentioned when you were describing it, these are children, right? So we have children playing on a playground, Jewish children. And then we have these agitators come up and ask these children if they're Jewish. So it very much is an identity situation, and it's hate based on someone's inalienable characteristics, just being Jewish, being born Jewish. So it's by definition a hate crime. Now, when the Chicago Jewish Alliance heard about this, we actually were the
And
ones
it
who
was
yeah.
recognized as such by Skokie police.
Correct, correct. Now they said at the meeting it was recognized that night, but it wasn't communicated to the community that that's where the label and I'll get back to that because when we found out that they did put a hate crime on, it was they said during the Skokie meeting that they did on October 7th, which by the way, I think is one of the things that I teased out in my speech was that not only was this a hate crime, but it happened on October 7th, the anniversary of the largest mass murder of Jews since the Holocaust. So there are just so many levels to this altercation that took place that really affected the community. Now, you asked why did they switch to the police station? So what happened was is what we do at the Chicago Jewish Alliance is we're the grassroots Jewish mobilization effort that fights anti-Semitism. We're unapologetic Zionists. We have one goal, it's to curb anti-Semitism here in Chicago. So what happens is we are probably the first line of defense. I always joke we're like white blood cells. It could be like in theater, you could see anti-Semitism. You could see theater, you could see anti-Semitism. It's ubiquitous everywhere. So with this case, I will tell you that the community was loud. This affected everybody. These children were all of our children. And I think it resonated with people in Skokie that although there's a large Jewish demographic here, it didn't seem that when something terrible happened, like a hate crime, that the actual community was respecting the demographic of Jews there. So they reached out to us. And I would say after a 2 week campaign of explaining this story, talking to media, there's a lot of press that I did regarding this. Spoke with the parents. We got them in touch with pro bono's attorneys at Lawfare Project, an amazing Jewish organization of attorneys who take on pro bono work in this space. If you look up Brooke Goldstein and her work, it's phenomenal. So really, our organization holistically was able to take care of the parents, mobilize the community, and I think what you saw was the accumulation of a lot of work over 2 weeks that we really had to push so that the community took us seriously.
I think it's because of you that I was even aware of something like this taking place and came there Monday. I think I called your office, to confirm it, and somebody there told me that it was moved to police station.
Yeah, it was a kind of a last minute thing. Although I will say this, we're seeing that more and more. When there is injustice, usually what happens now is the village will tend to try to accommodate meetings. And at first we saw this, but in the advocacy world, it's not that uncommon. But I do think it was not just me. I think there were 12 speakers, and each one of them was potent. They spoke about personalizing this. Some of them said, I'm a Jew. I live down the street. My children are the age of those victims. I mean, they made it very tangible and very real. And one after another spoke. And I think really, I've been to a lot of these meetings, and sometimes I'll talk to schools where they're indoctrinating students and they seem very aloof, they don't understand what's going on. I do think from my own subjective experience that in that room the point got across, and I really am optimistic to be working with Skokie, and we have been since then. We've been talking with the village and some of the trustees, and then on November 3rd there's another village meeting, and we are going to go back because we do want our community to know that we're mobilized and this isn't just a one-time thing, that we're here.
Same place in
Yeah.
police station.
We haven't gotten that confirmation yet. They're still staying at the
So
village.
anybody
So
who is interested, who watches it, can call you to find out where it will take place, right?
absolutely. I always recommend that. It's like the kinder, they all go to social media, and we're really good at posting on social media, on Instagram, Chicago Jewish Alliance, on Facebook, Chicago Jewish Alliance. I mean, we really try to use social media to get our message out. You can always go to chicagojewishalliance.org and we'll send emails out. But really, because the nature of advocacy work unfolds so fast and rapidly and in real time, we try to push the message out in real time on social media, kind of what we're dealing with.
What are you trying to achieve in this particular case in Skokie?
Well, I think there's a couple things. There's this systemic macro problem that is the marathon that I think is going to take, at least with my organization, we've had these talks internally about moving from putting out symptoms of anti-Semitism to actually putting Jews into power into these trustee positions, because ultimately that is what's going to help our cause. There's also this hate of indoctrination on many different other, so that's kind of something that we're going to be dealing with for years to come. But on the micro level, there's a couple things. First of all, there needs to be, I think municipalities need to start using data. Um, a lot of times we hear from the village or we hear from these school systems when we go up against these school systems, we hear this subjectivity. Oh, some kids like the teacher, or the gun that shot these kids at Shawnee Park in Skokie, it was more of a toy gun than a real gun. So rather than have these concessions, I think we need raw data from municipalities to understand, okay, we saw the ADL posted these statistics about Jewish hate crime. And when we actually use that as one of the most effective things I use in front of aldermen who want to say that there's anti-Semitism, but also LGBT has problems, I say, no, 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 I'm talking empirically here. Anti-Semitism is up X, Y, and Z%. So I think that there really needs to be holding these municipalities accountable to some degree in that sense. But regarding this one instance, I think we're already on the way there. I think at first we wanted to get it a hate crime. It was not labeled a hate crime, at least to the public, to any sense. And I think that there needs to be this community building between Skokie, between the trustees, between even Allison Sloven can be a great liaison to the Jewish community in setting this up. And honestly, to the parents, we got them great legal representation. And I truly believe one of the main things that stops crime as a deterrent is the consequence. And so I think that if we held these children or their parents accountable under the law to these a lot of law statutes in Illinois, for example, if you drink and drive and you kill somebody, your parents can be held liable if you drink and drive in their home. In the same sense that if you go take their gun and you go out and you kill someone, they can be held liable, at least in Illinois. So I think holding these municipalities accountable, but also the individual. And I really hope to see the parents get justice to some sense, whether that's economic, peace of mind. These children are going to be scarred the rest of their lives. They will think of this incident.
Hmm.
And I don't think you can quantify that with like a price on what that would cost. But apathy and not doing anything and just trying to be okay in the moment is just going to put the burden on the next generation of Jews. So I do believe that, like, although there is anti-Semitism, it can always be met if we stand up for ourselves. And so I really hope that the families, the Jews, and everyone else sees this example of what happened in Skokie.
I have to say that my impression of the meeting was not as positive as yours.
I've been called the radical optimist,
Uh,
yeah.
in fact, what I wanted from Mayor outright, clear-cut condemnation, not simply of particular case, but of the whole thing, and to bring it to public knowledge what took place, because you know it, some other people know, people in that room know, but 99.9% people in Skokie do not even know it.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess I have to set the expectations. I'm optimistic because the dialogue continues. And I think in any dialogue, negotiations, or even in advocacy work, you do need to maintain that optimism because we aren't stopping. One of the things about our organization is maybe that's why, because I also know that we will be relentless through this whole thing. I mean, I'm talking directly to the parents every day, even sending each other memes of inspiration. I mean, it's very real, to me. So I just get optimistic when it looks as though we can make change because maybe I'm jaded, but in so many areas post October 7th, it didn't seem like there was any inch that I can move forward in. So I am with you 100%. The goalposts are so moved for the Jews and there's so much work to do. But in that room that night, I was very impressed with the Jewish community articulating what was happening. And I was impressed that I felt, although I don't live in Skokie, I live in Chicago, okay? So you might know the players on the stage a little bit differently than me, but I did feel that this was a great introduction to something that we are going to be fighting in the future in Skokie and making sure that the community is safer. I think we took a terrible incident and hopefully we can build on that with the municipality to make it better, you know.
Also, I have to say we have to find a way to punish those kids, to punish
Definitely.
them and to punish their parents in any way we can. it seems to me like we're returning back to 1950s in the United States when Jewish kids were afraid to walk to school and back.
I think even 40s and the 30s, when you see these municipalities not do anything, so one of the things that chars in my brain in the Holocaust is like, okay, there were these people that hated Jews, right? And then there was Kristallnacht, and then there was these fires, and there was this just categoric mess in the Jewish communities that the firemen were called, and they show up and they just stood there and watched the ground burn. And I think we got to understand
Look at
that
this. In 1991 in New York,
yeah,
police
yeah.
stood by for 3 days doing nothing.
Right. So I tell Jews all the time, there's no salvation. There's no like one politician who's going to eliminate this. We need to be sober. There was a period of time in America, and I'll just say this because I grew up in the 90s when we had this false sense of assimilation. It's over. This golden idea of assimilation of Jewry in America, what we've learned here is we do need to build these mechanisms on a grassroots level. Yes, we have APAC hopefully helping us on federal levels about a relationship with Israel. But when your children and your grandchildren are at risk, there needs to be mechanisms in the community and resources and an aggregation of parents coming together to help support each other. And this might be the only silver lining I've seen since October 7th, is that post October 7th, Jews, especially in the diaspora, saw they sobered up real quick. And my grandpa was a partisans fighter. And I remember these stories of him telling me he'd run into the ghetto. He fought with the Belsky brothers, and he would try to tell these people, his cousins, everybody, he would try to sound these alarm bells. What I'm hoping is that with October 7th, in some way, the American people woke up to how existential our way of life is, how beautiful our culture truly is, and what we're doing here and why we're trying to protect this thing, not only for ourselves. I always say at the Chicago Jewish Alliance, our North Star is the next generation of Jews, because any strategic thing that we do today that can help will help the next generation of Jews. We've already been through it. Anytime we want to pass a burden on being confrontational, maybe about a bill that's coming up in your neighborhood, maybe about a teacher who's indoctrinating and not educating your students, it is worth that fight. Because if you give an inch, they will eventually move the goalposts all the way to where the firemen are going to watch your house burn. So
I agree with you very, very much. My question is, was there any representatives of any Jewish organizations at that meeting other than yours?
This is tough, Alexander. I don't know how to do this because the reality is I started this organization because other organizations, legacy organizations, were not showing up. I'm in healthcare. I own a healthcare company. So yes, we employ younger Jews now in Chicago Jewish Alliance. I'm a volunteer. I do this completely altruistic. My idea of success would be able to disband this organization. I made this organization with my fellow peers because we didn't see the cavalry show up for students that couldn't go to class and had to go past an encampment where they called them a baby killer. We didn't see unapologetic Zionists show up. And that's how we were formed. We were formed during the encampments. When they had these encampments, I was getting phone calls from Jewish students before Chicago Jewish Alliance crying to me. I mean, this is like, you talk about 1950s, like school ties, like putting swastikas on their beds and stuff. And
They do
we
it
didn't.
right now on the north side of Chicago
Yeah, I
today.
mean today. Yeah, and this is where we are now. It is the height of the Jewish civil rights movement in America. When you cannot go to class, that is segregation. When you are a Zionist pig and dehumanized just because of your inherent who you are, that to me is on par with
Did
what is going.
JUF send representatives?
No, the other night, no, they
Did
did not.
ADL send representatives?
No, no, no.
Mm.
And I think you'll get it out of me because, like I said, I don't give a shit. I'll give you the square deal. I go to these school systems. I go to all these different places. I go to City Hall, where, like I said, we're like white blood cells wherever we see manifest. I could say the Chicago Jewish Alliance will do something even detrimental to our organization if it helps the Jewish people. We'll say something. For example, politically, if Trump did something right, we'll say Trump did something right. We felt it was important to start a gun club called Locks and Loaded. We're actually now in 15 states. It's an amazing program. And we do some things that might not be politically correct, but we'll do them anyways. We're not tied to any of the politics in Chicago. We are tied and have a fiduciary duty to our constituents in our community. In fact, we have turned money down from donors. We launched something called membership. Okay. We won't take money from certain organizations. We'll take it from individuals, but we're grassroots. So we have 175 members that pay monthly, either 18 or $36. And then we do member forums. They get to tell us the good, the bad, the ugly. I mean, we're really trying to set up a utility here in Chicago for the Jewish community so I can go back to healthcare and we can have this here for us for the future. So we're trying to maintain our ethos that way.
Danielle,
Uh,
without you, that organization is going to collapse. I'm sorry.
Well, maybe it's time, every certain year there's disruption in marketplaces, I mean, this is just how it is and what capitalism in it and I mean, if someone's not showing up for your child, why would you donate to them anymore? Why? Because they have a nice corner office and a beautiful mortgage in Glencoe? No, it's existential for some of us. It's live or die for some
What
of
do you
us.
think Village of Skokie should do?
Oh, so first of all, going back to the data, I mean, I gave two things that I thought were really important. Data, by the way, to give ADL credit on something, maybe they don't show up like they claim to, but they do publish statistics. And I really do think you can quantify a lot of this. And when you start quantifying it, people on the sidelines will start going, I didn't know that. So I think the Skokie has to take a self-actualization moment from this. That board needs to meet again without the Jews in the room. I mean, and really understand how we view our lives in America, in Skokie, Illinois, where I grew up on the North Shore. My grandparents lived in Skokie. If, as a Jew, I don't feel safe in Skokie anymore, and the Jews are going to start leaving Skokie, that's going to be a big problem for Skokie and a lot of their businesses. So they even have they need to really take this self-action. They need to think about what communicative tissues are we going to have with the Jewish community? How are we going to be able to articulate moving forward? I said, even though they have a policy, they don't want to release certain things about minors. That's bullshit. We weren't asking for names. We were saying, did this incident have a hate crime? So there is an obvious transparency that they held up, that they kept up. And so these need to be brought down because the Jewish people no longer are going to take it. It's yeah,
But I see the even bigger problem that mayor
yeah,
of the city did
yeah,
not publicly articulate what took place and condemned it. She did some things in that room, but that
yeah.
is about it. I do not see it any other place in documents, in press releases. Did she make any press release? No. Did
You,
she ask a library in Skokie to conduct some seminar on anti-Semitism? No. Did she contact public schools in Skokie? In Niles West, last year, he had right after 2 years ago, after October 7th, the kids from Arab and Muslim families organized horrific processions within school halls, scaring Jewish kids out of their mind.
You know what? First of all, about the mayor, I didn't know that. The Chicago Jewish Alliance is going to reach out and make sure that she has memorialized exactly the weight of this incident. So they, thank you, Alexander, for bringing this to my attention. That is That's pretty important.
I'm in touch with the chief of police, who seems to be a very nice guy, and I'm going to
Okay.
produce some suggestions for him. Maybe we can do it both of us together.
Yeah.
And he
Yeah.
said that he is going to be trying to act on them, and he is going to deliver it to the commission and to the mayor and to other places. That's what he told me. So, and I prepared
Oh.
some things after this thing. Maybe we can share it and
Yeah,
see
please,
which way.
because that's not okay to me. I didn't know that. I thought because this is the easy thing to call out. If you can't call out the easy things, then we got problems. Then we got, you know.
There are people there, trustees, that were talking about fighting Islamophobia and racism. I'm all
Yeah, right,
against fighting any form of hate crimes, but
right.
this particular meeting was about anti-Semitism and hatred of Jews in Skokie, and commingling it with other things makes it not as
It deep
effective
out.
as it should be.
Yeah, it dilutes the seriousness. I think you go back to Jewish.
Especially
Yeah.
because somebody there mentioned that the number of hate crimes against Jewish residents of Skokie was greater than sum total of all hate against all others, including Muslims and blacks.
Do you see how effective it is to quantify though? When you start putting it into numbers, you can't you all of a sudden have a different argument to frame. You take it from the subjective experience of being a Jew and you say, no, look, this is an empirical point to make.
Daniel,
But
I'm all with you,
yeah,
but there is another problem.
yeah, yeah.
The problem
What is it?
is that not all hate crime
Yeah.
actually gets registered.
That's the other component to it. You are so right. You are so right. So there also needs to be markers of accountability that are quantified too, so that we can understand that. Like this instance, for example, I my per, here's how I think. I don't think it was classified as a hate crime. I personally called the sergeant a couple times. I don't know if that's who you're dealing with. They hung up on me twice. The phone got disconnected, you know? So I don't know what was happening behind the curtain, so I won't infer, but I think that the squeaky wheel got the oil in this situation. Moving forward, we need to have mechanisms in place that assure the Jewish community in Skokie that a spade will be called a spade. That's why I think it's so important that we reach back out to the mayor to get a quote on the mayor because it's very important to make sure we memorialize the seriousness
If
of
Jews
this.
cannot feel safe in Skokie, where in the world we can feel safe?
Well, you could do what my family did and make Aliyah to Boca Raton. Where,
Boca
that's where
Raton, Aliyah, I thought it was
that's what I call it
Yerida,
now.
it going down. But
Well, I
and
mean, Tel Aviv or Boca, it seems to be where I have a lot of friends in New York with this mayor getting elected that are going to leave
yeah,
because yeah.
Danielle, my dream is not Boca Raton. My dream is Andromeda.
Okay.
And I have to say, that given that long trip that I intend to take to Andromeda, not necessarily with all Jews in the spaceship.
Right. Well, you'll have a lot of solace and time to probably think. I mean, but really, I used I'm a radical optimist, but I'm also a realist. And I did start this organization because I felt that it is existential. And I don't see it getting better, unfortunately. I think a lot of people thought after this war, where does it leave us? And I do believe, like, for a lot of these kids, it's a fashion. They wear a keffiyeh like we would wear a Grateful Dead shirt or something. They're trying to fit in. They don't understand. But I think that there has been, and this is why I think we could talk about Skokie, the board. It all goes back to education. What they have done in our education system is they have framed the a binary choice between oppressor and oppressee. Okay. And essentially, what that means is that the privileged white Jew, Ashkenazi, he is a colonial settler, even though this is all inversion of the truth, right? The exact inversion of the truth. This is how the new instrument is being used. They took this
Daniel,
DE.
it does
Yeah.
not matter at all. I mean,
Well, if
there's
they're going to
plenty of
space.
other rich
Yeah.
non-Jews, but they're not
Yeah.
being attacked, and their kids are not being attacked. The selection is made Jews as targets. So that is the thing. And it makes no difference whether we are oppressors or oppressed. Makes no difference. When we are oppressors, our kids get slaughtered. When we are oppressed, our kids get slaughtered, and we
But
get.
let me ask you a question. If
Yeah.
you don't believe in merit, okay, let's say you believe in equity, not equality, but equity. And then you have a group of people like the Jews who seem to be very successful and doing very well. And in your school system, you learn that there are oppressed people and there are people that oppress those people. What happens? Why do you get the conflation between blacks in America and the PLO? Why are you starting to see the far left? These are all real things that ferment anti-Semitism that might seem like they don't matter, but it's a seed that goes down and
Daniel,
starts infecting the
what
minds.
can you do anything about those things?
Well, so you talk about Maine West. I think we could announce this. We had an indoctrinator instead of an educator, and she was tenured. And I'll be able to send you that info as soon as we get off. And everyone said, "Hey, can you do anything about this? She's tenured." And what she was doing, by the way, she would the kids had to read the book Night by Elie Wiesel, but she was making them read the book Night by Elie Wiesel and comparing it to the Palestinian struggle. And you could choose that or like the IRA, which is a conflation again of oppressed and oppressee. Okay. You are getting kids in the class starting to pick at other kids already. Anyways, she no longer works in that school or any school. So people say, can you do anything about it? I don't fucking know, but I do know if I don't show up, there's nothing that's going to happen. If I show up and I can bring and mobilize the Jewish community, I truly believe people don't understand how effective they can be. No one wants conflict. Everybody wants just for things to stay the same. Everybody has their interest in that happening. And I think, people would be surprised when you get together and you show up and you mobilize, you can make change. I have seen tangible change, and I have also seen times when there has been no change made and you want to hit your head against the wall. So,
Anti-Semitism is the
the
longest hatred
longest, but it
by
morphs. And
far.
when you get cancer,
And
you,
I don't,
yeah,
I'm not gonna even think about, doing anything about anti-Semitism,
sure,
as a phenomenon.
sure,
But I have
sure.
to say this: yes, used to be that in Skokie there was 60% of entire population was Jews. Now it's only 28%. And among those 28, probably two-thirds are over age of 50 or more. So it's much older community than used to be. And what I'm saying is that, you can think any way you want about your organization and its goals. My idea, why I came to that meeting is because I was able to, and because I wanted to do something to resist to these enemies of my people. That's all I can do. It does not mean that I feel that I can defeat them, that I can win, change their mind, as people were saying in that evening. They wanted to educate. This is the craziest thing of all.
Yeah.
I want to punish them. I want to punish their parents. If kids can be punished, they should be punished. The schools should be made aware of their behavior, and schools should take actions with regard to those kids. What actions? They know what actions, because they do punish kids sometimes for different things. This is a behavior that is worthy of recognition and punishment, and it is in Skokie. We're not even talking about Chicago. By the way, in 2021, as you know, there was an attack on Persian synagogue in the same neighborhood that this Shawnee Park is, just 1.5 block away. And what chief of police told me was that they did have a person who attacked. There was a bunch of people, and one of them they did grab, but the Cook County unit that handles it and defines what crime is hate crime and what not refused to denounce it as a hate crime, saying that Skokie police did not capture anybody. Now, chief of police told me that it was a lie. So there's a
So,
problem, and there's a problem with the Cook County. We know the
oh,
problem. You started in Cook County in Chicago.
yeah, I could go on. I don't think you have enough time for me to go on with the problems in Cook County.
But,
But
by the way, after you raised your voice in what January 2020 one, what no 24
23, I think.
24
22,
January
24.
24 there was
Yeah.
they brought the issue, of voting for a
Oh, yeah.
ceasefire. This
Yeah,
is when
sure.
you said that you started your organization, that
Yeah, but I think that was 23. It was 23.
okay, makes no difference. My memory is not good.
Okay.
But in any case,
Yeah.
since then,
Yeah.
more than 100 cities voted the same way. Chicago set an example for them. So we see that this anti Semitic attitude and politics has been spreading throughout the United States and in the world. I mean, it seems like October 7 was an opportunity for all the anti Semites to say, oh, I feel good about myself.
Yeah. I mean, I think that yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna beat a dead horse, but I think that they really look, here's the reality. I mean, here's where I think we're getting at is are we fighting the metaphorical boogeyman? Yes, right? I mean, there is every reason in the world to say this is beyond measure, etc., or whatever. I truly choose to believe that we can make a difference as a community if we mobilize. I truly do believe that. I think that,
What
they
would be the
may.
difference? What would you like to achieve?
So did you ever hear that anecdote of the guy who's walking on the ocean and he's picking up the starfish and he's throwing them into the water? Have you ever heard this? No? So there's a guy walking on a beach. There's millions and millions and millions of starfish. He's walking on the beach. He's picking them up one by one, taking one, throwing it into the water. Somebody comes up to him, a little boy says, "Excuse me, sir, why are you taking these starfish, picking them up and throwing them into the water?" And the man says to the boy, he goes, "Because do you see all these starfish?" And the little boy goes, "Yeah." And he goes, "Well, unless they go into the water, they're going to die." And so the little kid goes to the man, he goes, "Well, then why are you picking up these starfish? It doesn't really matter. There's millions and millions of starfish. It does not matter." And the guy goes, "It matters to this one." And he shows the kid that one and he picks it up and he throws it back into the ocean. So what I'm trying to say is that it's sometimes I say I'm a radical optimist. And I think that is so important in life because there are so many markers to look at that are going to detract. I know that when my grandpa and grandma left Italy after the war, they went from the partisans, they went through Italy back into Israel to fight again. And I go to my grandma, I go, "That seems like hell. How did you hold on to any hope? Why would you even have children? What markers in life did you see that were good?" And she goes, "What are you talking about? After the war, God gave us Israel. Now we have the IDF. Now we have a homeland that we can go to. Now we have this invisible dome in the sky that protects our civilians." So all I'm trying to say is what's important is that we move our people forward always. And we take one step, not a leap, one step. And I think if people woke up and took that one step in their own communities, they would actually be making a change that they would be shocked by. I'm shocked by the change I make. I'm a healthcare guy. I'm a normal guy. I'm a musician. Never thought in a million years I would be going to school boards advocating for children. I don't have children myself. I'm a fun uncle. I'm showing up to these school boards supporting these children. So I truly do believe that Hashem contacted me after October 7th and Jews around the world. And there has been a resurgence in Jewish pride and Jewish community and Jewish resources. And I think if you look at it through the lens that way, you kind of have a different perspective on if you can effectively make change.
Yeah, good things come out of bad things, and these anti-Semitic incidents, form
And
us
what do you tell
as,
the kinder, when they go, Grandpa, what do you think about my future? What do you say?
I say, your future is fantastic if you behave right.
And that's great advice. And that's the advice I would give to grown-up Jews and everybody. I would say get sober really quick, realize how existential this moment is in time, and start doing something about it.
Danielle, as I said, after I'll contact you and we'll talk about what we
Absolutely.
should suggest because there are things to do. We're not going to change the world. The world has its own ways of changing. I just hope that what we do is done uh, in the right, pushes it a little bit in the right direction, at least
Right.
pushes us in the right direction. Anyway, nice talking to you. And as they say in China, sei gesund.
Bless you. No, Gazai Gazan. Thank you so much, Alexander, for having me on. I appreciate it so much.
See
Thank
you.
you.
Bye.
Take care. Bye.